The Crying Ghost. In 1986, a group of college students from Oregon decided to use a Ouija board in their dorm room, seeking an evening thrill. They set up the board and dimmed the lights, creating an eerie atmosphere. The group asked if there were any spirits present and, to their surprise, the planchette began to move slowly across the board, spelling out YES. Excitement quickly turned to fear when the board spelled out the name RY, and then HELP. As the session continued, Mary revealed that she had died in the dorm room decades ago. She detailed how she had been a student in the same college and had suffered a tragic end. The atmosphere grew colder, and one of the girls felt an icy hand on her shoulder, causing her to scream in terror. The students tried to end the session, but the planchette wouldn't move to goodbye. Instead, it began to spell out the word SDY. Panic set in, and they threw the board aside. But the disturbances didn't stop there. Over the following weeks, they experienced strange occurrences in the room. Objects moved on their own. Inexplicable cold spots appeared, and at night, the sound of crying echoed through the halls. Eventually, the haunting became so unbearable that they had to request a room change. Years later, one of the students, now a researcher in paranormal activities, discovered that a student named Mary had indeed died under mysterious circumstances in the same dorm room in the 1950s. The chilling experience left a permanent mark on all involved, convincing them of the board's sinister potential. The possession of David. In 1993, a teenager named David from Massachusetts had a life-altering experience with a Ouija board that would haunt him forever. David and his friends had gathered in his basement for a night of fun, deciding to play with a Ouija board to test their bravery. The session started innocently enough, but quickly turned dark. When asked who they were speaking to, the board spelled out ZOZO, a name that none of them recognized but felt deeply unsettling. The planchette moved with an unnerving speed, and David began to act strangely. His face contorted in discomfort, and he complained of a sudden, intense headache. As the session continued, the board spelled out that David would SERVE Zozo. David's friends laughed it off as a joke, but David himself was visibly shaken. Over the next few days, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, claiming to see a shadowy figure at the foot of his bed. His personality changed. He became aggressive, withdrawn, and obsessed with the idea that he was being watched. His parents, alarmed by the drastic change, sought help from doctors and psychologists, but no one could explain his symptoms. Finally, they turned to a local priest who suggested an exorcism. During the exorcism, David's behavior became violent. He spoke in a guttural voice that wasn't his own, and he exhibited superhuman strength. After the exorcism, David slowly returned to his normal self, but the experience left him scarred. He never fully recovered from the trauma and avoided any talk of the supernatural for the rest of his life. The name Zozo and the events that transpired serve as a chilling reminder of the potential dangers lurking behind the innocent facade of a Ouija board. The shadow in the basement. In 2010, a couple named Laura and Michael from Ohio bought an old house that had been unoccupied for years. Eager to start a family, they were drawn to its charm despite its dilapidated state. While cleaning out the basement, they found an old, dusty Ouija board tucked away in a corner. Intrigued by its history, they decided to use it one evening, hoping to connect with any spirits that might have once lived in their new home. Laura and Michael set up the board in their living room, lighting candles to set the mood. They asked if any spirits were present, and the planchette slowly moved to YES. They asked for a name, and the board spelled out LICE. They asked Alice how she died, and the board chillingly spelled MURDER. Disturbed but curious, they pressed on, asking who had killed her. The board spelled SHADOW. At that moment, the candles flickered, and a cold draft swept through the room. Laura felt an overwhelming sense of dread and insisted they stop, but Micah wanted to continue. Suddenly, the planchette moved violently across the board, spelling LEAVE. Frightened, they ended the session abruptly, but the house did not return to normal. Over the following weeks, they experienced a series of terrifying events. Shadows moved in the corners of their vision. Objects were mysteriously relocated, and at night, they heard faint whispers coming from the basement. The final straw came when they both saw a dark, humanoid figure standing at the foot of their bed one night. Laura screamed, and the figure vanished, leaving them shaken to the core. Desperate for answers, they researched the history of their house and discovered that a young woman, Alice, had indeed lived there in the early 1900s and had been mysteriously murdered. They contacted a paranormal investigator who conducted a thorough investigation and concluded that a malevolent spirit had been awakened by their Ouija board session. The couple decided to sell the house and move far away, never looking back. The experience left them with an unshakable belief in the supernatural and a deep fear of the unseen forces that can be unleashed by a simple game. These true stories illustrate the potential dangers of using a Ouija board, showing how what starts as innocent fun can quickly turn into a terrifying ordeal. Whether or not one believes in the supernatural, the psychological impact of these experiences can be profound and lasting.